onslaught. Mother Nature makes a mess of a southeast Texas still rebounding from Harvey. Is devastating weather our new normal? And what can be done to shield lives and property? In the Bayou City, a high-profile outcry against bail reform, as yet another violent criminal released on bond opens fire at police. And the president in town to greet the leader of the world's biggest democracy. Will the Texas howdy to Modi improve relations? I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, legendary reporter turned investigative media consultant Wayne Dolcefino. Next up, legal analyst and Houston attorney Carmen Roe. In the three spot, Charles Blain, leader of the advocacy group Urban Reform. Batting cleanup, longtime Fox 26 legal and political analyst Chris Tritico. Next up, conservative attorney and Second Amendment expert Michelle Maples. And closing us out on the hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's go get it. Like a tough but punch-drunk fighter, the Texas Gulf Coast answered the bell for yet another round with Mother Nature and took a serious beating. After a head fake move to the north, Tropical Storm Imelda spent a full day dumping rainfall in Harvey-like proportions on Harris, Chambers, Liberty, and Jefferson counties. The numbers are still coming in, but it's safe to say hundreds, if not thousands, of homes have taken on water, untold vehicles flooded, and 5 lives lost. 9 barges busted loose on the San Jacinto, with a pair careening into the vital I-10 bridge and one smashing into the toxic dump known as the San Jacinto River waste pits. For Greater Houston, it was the 4th so-called 100-year event in 4 years. In a tweet which capsulized at least the human component of this disaster equation, Matt Lanza, the highly regarded meteorologist at Space City Weather, wrote, "For years, politicians from both political parties have not prioritized flooding mitigation in this area the way they should have. The Army Corps, feds haven't done enough. The state hasn't done enough. No one has done enough." So what next in the short term? Flooding and drainage is a major issue in the mayoral race. In the long run, does anybody still deny that climate change is happening? And it's major. Ramifications for this place we all call home. As leader of Urban Reform, I'm going to go to you first, Charles Blain.
Yeah, well, first of all, shout out to Matt Lanza, who does a great job in following all this stuff, and he's originally from New Jersey, which is another plus in his side. But in my mind, this breaks off into 2 points. I think the first point is there's been a lot of frustration directed at the mayor following this and following the outcome of this storm. But this was, from what I read, the 5th wettest tropical cyclone in the continental U.S. So there's very little, I think, that could have been done differently. I mean, the loss of life was minimal. There was structural damage, but overall, for the millions of people caught in Imelda's path, I think we fared better than what would have been expected from a storm that we didn't really see coming and didn't expect to be as bad as it was going to be. But I think the second half of this is that, we have a mayor now who's running for re-election, and who, you go to his website, he doesn't have an issue section. He doesn't have a flood plan released to the public for what he wants to do these next 4 years. You just said, we saw 4 terrible storms in the past 4 years. We're likely going to see this continuing to go forward. So we need to know where he's going to take us, what he wants to do, what his plans are, and not what he's done in the past. And that's what we're not getting. And I think voters need to be really concerned about that, because we are 6 weeks away from an election, and we have no idea what he's running on, what he's proposing. His opponents have released flood plans. We know what they want to do, but we need to know what the mayor's going to do.
Wayne, what's your take on this?
So look, I don't blame Sylvester Turner for climate change, okay, whatever. But look, there's a couple of major problems. He only spent half of our drainage money on drainage when he promised to spend it all. Point 2, the Harvey recovery was a disaster. Point 3, we have spent hundreds of billions of dollars on flood control in this town, right? I used to drive down the West Park and see the thing flooded after every storm, right? And I go, why don't we tell the people who designed that and engineered that they owe us our money back? We hold no one responsible for anything. I live on a street, Tartan, don't come by. I live on a street, and at the corner of that street, it's flooded like 3 times since I've been there, right? And I go, let me think this through logically. Why don't we identify all the places we know that floods? all the time, including some of our freeways, and actually like direct people to find out why the heck they do that. I get the bayous. I get flooding rains, but there are so many things we can fix to make sure that our drains are prepared. I mean, that's what a mayor actually should do, but we can't pick up the trash on time, so who the hell expects them to take care of our flooding? Really?
Okay, I'm looking at this from a practical sense. If I'm a major corporation looking to relocate to Texas and Houston as a possibility, is this flooding, this chronic flooding, going to keep people from coming here? Chris Tritico.
Well, yes, it is. And the problem is so much deeper than what we're looking at today. And Mayor Turner cannot fix this on his own. We have spent 50 years not paying attention to this. This problem started when the Corps of Engineers stopped working on flooding in the Houston-Harris County area 50 years ago. They built 2 reservoirs and then stopped. Our leaders stopped working on this 50 years ago when they decided to let developers deal with flooding and develop instead of deal with flooding. And no one has forced flooding issues at the top until today, and it's too late. Now we're going to have to back up and really pay attention to flooding over developing and look at how we're going to move water out at these critical times. And that's the issue that we have to look at. And we can't come in today and say it's Mayor Turner's fault or it's Lena Hidalgo's fault when we have not looked at this for 50 years.
Okay, do we need a Marshall Plan? I mean, you know, the climate appears to be changing. You know, I don't believe in coincidences. 4 massive storms in 4 years. Take it away, Michelle.
So I am not a scientist. I'm not going to pretend to be a scientist, but I did read up on NASA's website about climate change yesterday. And what I found out there was that greenhouse gases are the cause of our rising temperatures. Now, what causes greenhouse gases? Number 1, respiratory function. So, Tony, you breathing in my world is causing.
I will stop for weeks.
Fine, I will stop breathing.
It's causing our greenhouse gases to go up. Second is volcanic eruption. We can't do anything about that, so let's move that to a side. However, George Carlin has an excellent bit on that I think everybody should watch. Third, it's carbon dioxide, which we can mitigate. And it all comes down to responsibility. So let's invest in carbon capture technologies and push them out to our power plants, because power plants, when they burn fossil fuels, and we like electricity, I don't think any of us want to go back to the pre-industrial revolution where we're all off the grid and we can't turn our lights on and we can't turn our heat on. So let's develop some technology that we can push out to our power plants that will mitigate the damage of carbon dioxide, which will in turn perhaps level out our climate change issue.
Okay, Tony, you advocate for the most vulnerable. You know, as you watch this unfold, what was going through your mind?
Well, I think this got real because it hit at 10 a.m., right when people are going to work and going to school. So this is not theoretical anymore. People can see how it wreaks havoc in our daily lives because kids were stranded at schools. Aldine, Acres Homes always floods. I was stranded in Acres Homes. I-45 in Parker, there were cars floating by. So we really do need to get smart people together with citizens and people from the neighborhoods to sit down and say, here, this floods all the time, let's change that. And we need everyone from the federal to county to local, but again, people from the neighborhoods and barrios sitting down with these leaders and saying, fix this so my house doesn't flood anymore.
Final word, Carmen.
We've already talked about this on the show. We have to do something about this flooding. We're the 4th largest city in the nation, and this is an embarrassment. And the truth is that I don't know if it's climate control or not, but it's here, and it's something that is exacerbated by our continued denial that this is a problem that we can actually fix, and that our leaders, much like Charles said, aren't even focused on it, even though we have all of these people in Houston suffering each and every time we get a large amount of rain.
Okay, gotta leave it there. When we return, is bail reform in Harris County putting too many violent criminals back on the street? We hear from Houston's top cop after the break. Welcome back. It's been a tumultuous month for Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo. First, he personally arrested a suspect drag racing in downtown. Later, he personally led an HPD rescue team extracting flood victims in Kingwood. The point being, if there's a job that needs doing or an outcry that needs making, Chief Art Acevedo is not shy. This week, Acevedo erupted after yet another officer-involved shooting in pursuit of an armed suspect who'd been released from jail 2 weeks earlier on a $0 bond for a reported carjacking. That suspect is now dead after brandishing a weapon near an elementary school. The chief's target in the aftermath, progressive criminal court judges executing the bail reform pushed by Harris County Democratic leaders like Judge Lena Hidalgo and Commissioner Rodney Ellis.
But we need the courts to do their job and to stop pussyfooting with violent criminals. Period. God forbids, or a community member, every time somebody gets injured, I'm going to call them out by name. If you knew that these judges were going to let a violent criminal get out on a low bond, do you want to testify against them?
Panel, the cases of violent offenders cut loose on bond only to reoffend are stacking up. Does Acevedo have a legitimate beef? And I throw this question to Carmen Roe.
Look, criminal justice is not a one-stop shop. Much to Art Acevedo's chagrin, we actually have a due process system that everybody goes through. Everyone plays a role. And so while the chief may have time to chase down criminals, that's actually not his job. It's also not his job to armchair quarterback what a judge decided to set on a bond. And he set a low bond because in this case there was a bond set. And the original charge was a criminal trespass, a misdemeanor for a 17-year-old who was set a reasonable bond that he could make so that he could return to court. And keep in mind, bail is for no other purpose than to ensure that the person is going to be present in court and to ensure the safety of the community. In this case, there was no indication that he was going to go out and shoot at police officers. And so what I would say is that, you know, the law enforcement brings cases to the prosecutor takes those cases to a judge, and a judge makes a call based on the information that they're given. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, this is not an isolated incident. We've talked about this issue before. Michelle Maples, what's your take?
So this is what I want to know. The reports I read is that he was taken in due to a misdemeanor trespass. Now, if that's all we're looking at, he was in front of Judge Jordan's court, who is a cash-free bond advocate. So let's keep that in mind. So if the only evidence that was presented to Judge Jordan was, hey, this is a 17-year-old kid, he committed a trespass, I'm with you on the cash-free bond. However, if there was some sort of inclination, if this judge was made aware that this individual was also involved in a violent carjacking, a felony, perhaps we need to use our discretion that judges have at looking at what sort of crime they committed. Are they a flight risk? Are they a danger to themselves or the community? And if there was evidence of a carjacking, then I think that answer is yes, and perhaps that bond should have been set higher. And if that bond was set higher, then we would have had a different outcome. We wouldn't have a kid that's dead on the streets today. Okay, Chris Tritico, is there a risk here that the good things that criminal justice reform does, i.e. keeping poor people from languishing in jail, losing their apartments, their jobs, and their cars, could be in danger if some of these cases start stacking up?
Well, of course, and the problem that Chief Acevedo is overlooking is the years that Harris County spent doing just that. When the Republicans held every bench in Harris County, they kept poor people in jail to ensure that they would come out of jail and plead guilty to crimes that they may not have been guilty of. And that's what caused the county to get sued in federal court, forcing this settlement that's being shoved down their throat. And so Chief may be mad at the Democrats that are in power today, but it was the Republicans that got sued over this issue. And so the chief is mad at the wrong people. Now, with respect to this young man who just got killed, I looked at that file. And in Judge Jordan's court, they asked for a mental health exam before he got out of jail, and he was examined. And he was let out on a $100 bond. When he got out and he got rearrested on the felony, he was looked at by a magistrate and given the bond, not the judge in the district court. And so the chief is mad at the wrong people. But everybody in the United States is entitled to a bond. And in the district court, the state filed a motion for a high bond, and a hearing was held on that bond. So I understand the chief's concern, and nobody wants police officers to be in a gun battle. I agree with the chief on that, and I wish this young man hadn't have done that. But that doesn't make the system wrong. And if they didn't want these things to happen, then the Republicans should have changed the system 20 years ago and not violated people's rights.
Okay, speaking of Republicans, are they licking their chops on this issue? Charles Blaine.
Yeah, I mean, I think Republicans are pointing to this as another reason why they need to be put back in power next cycle. I mean, I think what we're seeing is admittedly, this was a problem that started with Republicans. I think I've long been outspoken about this issue that Republicans lean towards heftier bonds, and unfortunately, it disadvantaged poorer folks way more than what we're seeing now with the court. But you're seeing the pendulum swing to the opposite side now, and we're starting to see, as you said, these start to stack up. So yeah, I do think Republicans are looking at this, and they're adding them up because, I mean, we're seeing crime increasing. We're seeing the police chief be more outspoken now. This is certainly an issue. This is an issue in the city. It's an issue in the county, and Republicans are going to use it next cycle.
Tony, take 30 seconds. Leave some for your friend Wayne.
Well, no, I'm a proponent of bail reform, but I think our leaders do need to get in front of this and explain to the people what happened and how it won't happen again. Because exactly during the next election, Republicans can say someone that carjacked someone, pointed a gun at someone, got out on $100. That looks bad, that sounds bad, but we need our leaders to be wise and come back and say, here's when it didn't work, here's how it did work, here's how it won't happen again.
Okay, Wayne, close us out on this topic.
So I know I'm all touchy-feely about criminals and people who do things to other people. I don't care if they're all in jail. I really don't, okay? And the bottom line is blaming Republicans who may have been a little tougher to sort of counter the fact that a lot of Democratic judges just think everybody should just be running around and give them another chance, please. You know what? I don't like criminals. I don't blame the chief for being frustrated. I talk to cops all the time that are frustrated about this. They risk their butts putting criminals in jail, and then some judge lets them out to do it again to someone else. We got to fix that. But I think Acevedo in this, I understand the frustration.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. I'm sure we're going to talk about it again. Up next, America's president is in the Bayou City. Fox 26's Rashi Vats is set to give us a preview of Mr. Trump's meeting with India's prime minister. So stay with us. Welcome back. President Trump is in town today to meet with India's prime minister. 50,000 people are expected to attend the event at NRG. That's where we find Fox 26's Rashi Vats. Hey, Rashi.
Hey, good morning, Greg. Yeah, we're right outside of NRG Stadium on a Sunday, and we're not talking about the Texans. We're talking about Prime Minister Narendra Modi coming here. It's Howdy Modi. That's what the event is called. And you had mentioned it, 50,000 people expected to attend here. We've seen many of them walking through right now. And just to give you a perspective, Narendra Modi did come to the U.S. 2 other times. He addressed a crowd in New York and in San Francisco, both less than 20,000 people. So we do it big here in Houston and in Texas. Now, there are some people that are expected to protest his arrival here in Houston. We did see a few of them. There are supposed to be a few hundred, according to a Facebook group. And he's getting this criticism because of recent crackdown in disputed Kashmir. And this is going to be a chance to energize his relationship with Indian Americans who are active political supporters. Now, we also know that President Trump will be arriving. And I have to tell you, I've been in contact with the organizers for months now. And it was just a few weeks ago that they were informed that President Trump will be arriving here at NRG Stadium and addressing the crowd as well. And this is going to be one of the few times that he is addressing a crowd that is majority foreign born. So this is going to be interesting. And many critics are saying that many people will not be actually taking in his welcome. Some saying they will be. So we'll just have to wait and see. But a very historical and interesting time. We do know that at 8:45, the program will begin with a 90-minute cultural performance with more than 400 people across the Houston area that will be participating in that. And then Prime Minister Narendra Modi and then President Trump are expected to make their addresses. We'll bring you a complete report later on Fox 26's evening shows. For now, reporting live outside of NRG Stadium, Rashi Vats, Fox 26 News.
Okay, thanks, Rashi. Still ahead, he's smart. He's experienced, and he wants to serve Texas in the United States Senate. Houston's own Chris Bell is here this morning for a hot seat conversation, so stick around. Welcome back. He has served our community well on Houston City Council and in the House of Representatives. Now former Congressman Chris Bell is aiming for a new job representing all Texans in the United States Senate. Chris Bell, it is a pleasure to have you in the hot seat.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. Why are you running, and what do you bring to the table that others in the Democratic field don't?
Well, I'm very concerned about the overall direction of our country, and I'm very upset that we have a Senator John Cornyn who wants to act basically as a water boy for the president. I hoped he would be someone who would stand up to the president, especially when it came to things that were not in the best interest of our state, but he hasn't even been willing to do that. You look at when the president proposed placing very damaging tariffs on Mexico. A number of Republican senators stepped up and said that's a very bad idea. John Cornyn wasn't willing to join with them in condemning that action. And so at some point, I think we need new leadership. And I think that time is now, and obviously I think the gap is closing here in the state of Texas. Many are describing us as purple. I think there's a very good chance there'll be a blue wave, and I think people can look at how I've served in the past and get a pretty good idea of how I'll serve in the future.
Absolutely. Congressman, we are once again reeling from a major weather event, and you know what it's like to have several feet of water in your home. How would you lead on this issue? And is there any doubt in your mind about climate change?
No. When you're leaving your home for the last time with 6 feet of water in it, you don't really deny climate change any longer after you've lived through an event like that, and one the year before and one the year before that. And so obviously the storms are getting a lot worse. And what's also upsetting, Greg, going back to Texas being able to lead, we are in a perfect position to lead on this issue. We have an incredible amount of renewable resources here in the state of Texas, and if we want to continue to be the energy capital, especially in the city of Houston, then we need to be leading in that direction, not denying the future, but accepting it and doing something about it. And we're perfectly positioned to do so, but we're not.
Congressman, the crisis on our border continues, a crisis your Democratic colleagues blame almost entirely on the president. What should be our policy regarding asylum seekers, and do you support, as say Secretary Castro, decriminalization of undocumented entry?
Well, I have a big problem with those coming to the border being treated like criminals. The fact that they can no longer apply or seek asylum at the border is another move in the wrong direction. And what's very worrisome is that this has been a problem for years and years. We were talking about it back when I was in Congress, but now because of the actions of the president, it's gotten so much worse, crippling the morale of the Border Patrol agents. That's going to take a long time to repair. And I've always wanted more Border Patrol agents. I've never favored open borders. I've always favored taking greater advantage of technology to send messages back down to earth so you can guard a wider swath. And I've always supported a pathway to citizenship. And I think it's absolutely absurd to pretend that without a pathway to citizenship, we're going to be able to accomplish real immigration reform. You can't deport millions of people, especially those who have been living here lawfully and contributing to our economy. It makes no sense whatsoever, and certainly a wall is the worst idea imaginable.
Okay, there's a genuine belief that after years of Democratic shift and migration from other parts of the country, Texas is poised to turn blue, and you mentioned that earlier. As a prominent Democrat working to build the base during the lean years, what's your analysis?
Well, I feel great about where we find ourselves right now. I don't think a lot of us thought it would happen quite this quickly. But let's face it, Donald Trump has been very inspirational for people in the Democratic Party. And he's inspired many to get off the sidelines and finally get involved. We saw it in the midterms, and we're going to continue to seek it. And it's my belief that with him not just sitting in the White House, but at the top of the ticket running for re-election, he will take us the rest of the way home. And I think that's what a lot of others are seeing, and that's why you have a crowded Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate race.
Hey, you have been looking hard at Senator Cornyn's record. Are there other failures that you think are glaring?
Well, I think you can go down the line, whether we're talking about health care or energy or immigration. I find him on the wrong side of all those issues. You go back to energy, and instead of accepting the fact that climate change is real, he's basically a climate denier for the most part, or has been. has done really nothing in terms of championing renewable energy. Instead wants to pretend that we're just going to continue to rely upon fossil fuels. That's not real leadership. Obviously it's going to have to be phased in over time, but to pretend that we're not moving toward the future doesn't do anything for the people of Texas or the people of the United States.
Chris Bell, looking forward to covering your campaign.
Well, thanks a lot,
Thanks
Greg.
for taking the hot seat.
Thank you so much.
Okay, when we come back, the National Rifle Association and Texas politicians. Stunning new numbers detail just how much cash the gun lobby is spreading around, and you may just be surprised. We will talk about it after the break. Welcome back. This week, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, humbly apologized for wearing makeup that darkened his skin to a school gala with an Arabian Nights theme. Critics said the so-called brown face was racially offensive, and 18 years later, Trudeau agreed, complicating the dust-up the emergence of yet another image of the famously liberal politician, this time in blackface.
Obvious that this is something that was deeply regrettable. The recent pictures that came out, I had not remembered. And I think the question is, how can you not remember that? The fact is, I didn't understand how hurtful this is to people who live with discrimination every single day.
So what do we make of this situation and others like it? Is Trudeau guilty of racism, or is this political correctness gone bazonkers? Starting with Tony Diaz.
Oh, that's racist. That's straight up racist. That shouldn't be done. Now, but let's compare. Let's compare the American president's racism versus the Canadian Prime Minister's racism. Because here's how this works. If we point out something to you and say, yo, that's racist, stop it. And you acknowledge it and say, you know what? That was wrong. I didn't realize I would hurt people. Let me stop doing it. That's different. And in addition, let's compare Trump's racism. He's got no Chicanos on the cabinet.
I knew it.
He's got no Latinos higher up there as well. And he's using whistles like build a wall. I don't see Trudeau doing that. And in fact, he's using actually multicultural algorithms to find people for his staff, his team. It's a different approach. He's not perfect, but I tell you what, this is one example how to deal with racism of the past that you got wrapped up in, and then in the future, implement ways to have a diverse team and actually make a whole community that's diverse and extol them and help them in some different ways, instead of propagating this colonial view of the world.
Okay, Wayne Dolcefino, you have a rebuttal.
I don't know what to say.
I used big words. He got confused.
We got
He got
Trump
confused
and
by the
Chicano
big
about
words.
something, but let me talk about this for a minute. Okay, first of all, Justin Trudeau is a wimp. He's a wimp for apologizing. Look, we ought to raid Party City today, right? Because Party City has all kinds of different color skin masks in their store, and I think it should be shut down immediately. Look, Justin Trudeau was doing a costume of a guy from Arabian Nights. They weren't crackers, Tony. Look, I love Charles Blain. I love Charles Blain. If I'm going to do my Charles Blain costume at my Halloween party this year, I ain't going as a white guy. This is the silliest nonsense ever.
You're championing blackface,
If I want
Blaine? I want to just clarify.
If I want to
Are
honor
you
Michael
championing
Jackson,
blackface?
Tony, shut up for a second.
No, are you championing blackface?
hold on, guys.
If I want to honor Michael Jackson, because I think Michael Jackson was a good pop singer before all the other weird stuff, right? And I wear a glove, and I go to my Halloween party with a glove. No one the hell is going to know I'm Michael Jackson.
That would be white hand.
There is a
That would be a white hand,
There is a
not a
difference
blackface.
between insulting people and making fun of people and sort of just honoring who they were. And if we can't put humor back in this world, we are so you-know-what.
Save it for Confederate statues.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Previously mentioned Charles Blaine happens to be here. So
I want to
let's
go
get
as
his
Charles
take.
Blaine. Charles. My Charles Blaine costume, please.
This is interesting. It's crazy. In 2019, we keep finding out all these politicians who thought blackface was appropriate at some point, which is kind of weird. But it's not racist. I don't think it's racist. I think it's insensitive. It's stupid. He was young. He was dumb. He was at a party. All those things. He apologized for it. Let's get over it. The problem is that, with blackface, where the issue lies is when they're trying to make fun of black people or brown people. Him, Governor Ralph Northam, dressing up as Michael Jackson, and all these other ones that we've been hearing about lately, they're just emulating some African American or Hispanic, or Middle Eastern famous person that we know, that the culture has known. And so I don't find it racist. I find it stupid, insensitive, but that's about it.
Okay, Carmen, is this much ado about nothing or something we should take?
Yes.
I'm not really sure what, I don't think it's racist, but I would say please just stop painting your face black. Yes. There's got to be a better way to entertain ourselves. That's it.
Okay, Chris.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think that's such a refreshing take on this. And I just want to know, how far back do we have to go in someone's life when they get into public office? And Justin Trudeau was 29, and so I think that maybe he was a little old enough to realize that probably wasn't a good idea. But how far back do we go in someone's life to destroy it? And when do we stop? There comes a time when someone should be able to run for public office and not have to answer, when I was 16, it was a mistake. And we have to let people run for office and do the things that they think are right for their community and not have to answer for the things that they did when they were young.
But I don't want to make light of this. I don't want to make light of this because there's also a lot of bias involved. And let's flip the script. West Side Story. You had the one time a Latina could have played a leading role, and they gave it to an Anglo woman. And Lita Moreno then had to be beneath her and finally gets acknowledged for her talent, but not because she was actually in the right place at the right time. So I think let's not make light of this. There is media bias. It's not always as bad as we think it is, but we got to use our heads and humanize people.
Okay, Taylor, I'm going to go. That's my producer. I'm going to go. I love this topic, so I'm going to give Michelle Maples a chance to chime in.
All right, number one, I guess I'll rethink my Beyonce costume.
Yes.
Number two, I think I look like her, but anyway. Number two, I think Trudeau's been living in fear every day since he was 29.
That's right.
That this photo surfaced, and it finally did. Trudeau is not a racist. Megyn Kelly, not a racist. But let's point out the hypocrisy between the two figures and the sort of media coverage those two individuals have gotten.
Okay, we're going to leave it there, but that was a good discussion. Meantime, Harris County's once powerful, now reeling Republican Party met this week to make some potentially meaningful pre-election decisions. Most notably, the membership voted to table a proposed endorsement in the Houston mayoral race, a development widely viewed as a setback for candidate Bill King and a potential benefit for candidate Tony Busby. Republicans did vote to oppose the multi-billion-dollar bond proposal from Houston Metro, a measure pushed by the mayor and others looking to expand mass transit, and opposed by others who predict a boondoggle with Houston taxpayers left holding the bag. One of those folks is Wayne Dolcefino. You don't like this thing, do you?
Hell no, with a capital no. Look, first of all, I was at a Metro meeting last week. If you want to watch a cluster, please watch it, okay? They're moving lines around. They don't know what they're doing. They're saying, oh, don't worry about it. 15 years from now, I ain't giving you $3.5 billion unless I know exactly what you're doing with it. Number two, the last two rail lines have bad ridership. Number three, this commercial they're running every 7 seconds on TV, Metro has spent $2.5 million in the last 2 months on advertising to get us to vote yes. We are so great. Please give us more money. That is against the law in this state. It always has been. And somebody should call it out. Those mailers in 900 different languages, they're sending us how great they are. This is against the law. And the chairman of that board should resign. Her and her husband pledged $100,000 to that PAC. They're soliciting money for people who are going to make money from it. This is exactly what pay to play looks like.
Wow, that's a whole lot. Blaine, I know you actually study this stuff. Yeah. What do you think of this proposal?
So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the proposal at all. I think, we were talking about this off camera before, is that this idea that if you build it, the riders will come. We need to be proven that this is going to be a successful line. All these lines that they're going to build, whether it's the rail line to Hobby Airport is going to be successful and worth the money, whether it's these additional bus lines, whatever the case is, we need to be proven that. What I find really notable about this process with HCRP, the Harris County Republican Party, is that the chairman of Metro came to the party and not testified, but presented the bond and the big plan to the local government committee prior to the vote. So they had the details, they got to ask all the questions they wanted, they really got to dig into this, and the body still flatly rejected it overwhelmingly. So I do find that really interesting. I think it's going to carry a lot of weight with the body and with other Republicans across the county.
Okay, Tony.
Here's the election slogan. Republicans don't care about people riding the bus. I think we should get all the Republicans on buses and ride them out of Harris County, just like we voted them out of here. Because at the end of the day, this is a win-win. We're not raising taxes. We're going to make the feds pay for this, and we got to do something about congestion. On top of it, Democrats need to get ahead of this and say, okay, here's the issues you have with it. Let's be smart about it. But also, let's paint Republicans as the team that doesn't want to do anything about climate. Because right now the youth care about what's going on in the streets, in the air. They're the only ones that care about this. Republicans don't care about people who are poor, don't care about your bail, don't care about your bus, don't care about the air you breathe. I can't wait till they're extinct.
Oh.
Ouch.
Which will be soon. Bye.
All right, still
Bye,
ahead.
Grumpy.
Still ahead. Well, we gotta go. Still ahead. Our panel answers the question, what did we miss? Stay with us.
Ciao.
Welcome back. Try as we might, we just can't stuff everything you probably need to know into this single hour of discussion. And that's why we save a little time to fill in a few gaps with the question, what did we miss, Tony Diaz?
It's Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm going to celebrate it by extolling African American studies. Texas State Board of Education will be considering endorsing African American studies statewide. We want our African American brothers and sisters scholars to know that Chicanos, Latinos, Libertad Africana stand with you. If they give you beef at the TA, we will be with you on buses in Austin standing by you. Texas, shine now. Please, ethnic studies across the board.
Michelle Maples.
Okay, woof. Now that Imelda has come and gone, I want to send a special thank you for all of the reporting that Fox 26 did to keep all of us informed on. Yeah, I don't get paid for that. To keep us informed, to stay home and the conditions around the city, and a special thank you to Mattress Mac for again opening his doors and providing food and shelter to those in need.
Hear, hear, Chris.
Try as he may, we now learned that Wayne Dolcefino is the model for Grumpy on Snow White.
Okay, there you go.
That's right.
Charles Blaine, real quick.
Yeah, I just found out about this really cool nonprofit that works with local governments in town. It's called 8 Million Stories. They're a non-traditional alternative education program that helps kids break the school to prison pipeline. 100% of their kids graduate with vocational training afterwards. Great organization.
Sounds great. Carmen Roe.
Imelda was a huge tragedy for a lot of people. Keep in mind that it's emotional and financial when you go through that, and just because the waters have receded, the healing only begins, and so reach out to your neighbors.
Absolutely. Wayne.
I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday so that I could come here and listen to freaks like Tony. Thank you very much.
Grumpy!
All right, that's all the time we have. Thanks to our team. Remember, keep it right here. Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace is coming up at the top of the hour. Be sure and join us next week for the latest edition of What's Your Point. Have a great Sunday. Go Astros, go Texans.
Go Stros!